All right, so we'll just go through some problem sets on demand and answer. Like when we are done with the theories, then in our next video we'll look at elasticities. Okay, so elasticity of demand and answer. All right, so let's look at the first one. Practice problem 1. We are to explain the effects on the demand for cell phones. The following, if the following events that occur at the time. Okay? Now, we are just taking them individually, so the events are not occurring at the same time. So we'll pick the first one, then we'll look at its effect on the demand for cell phones. Okay? So the first one we'll look at is what is going to happen to the demand for cell phones if the price of a cell phone falls. Okay, if the price of a cell phone falls. Now, we know of the law of demand. When price falls, we should expect an increase in quantity demanded. Is that okay? When the price of a commodity falls, we should expect an increase in quantity demanded. By here, there will be no change in demand. It is quantity, a change in quantity demanded. So that is what the question is about. We should be able to distinguish between a change in demand and then a change in quantity demanded. Is that okay? So the first one, from the last time we met, we saw that we only have a change in quantity demanded whenever there's a change in price of a commodity. Whenever there's a change in any of the other factors affecting demand, that one affects the demand of the commodity in question, not the quantity demanded. So for the price of a cell phone falling, we should expect an increase in the quantity demanded of cell phones. Okay. And then the second one, the price of a cell phone is expected to fall next month. So this one too, what is the factor we are considering here? Changes in future prices, expectations of future prices. And we saw that if consumers expect an increase in the price of the commodity in the future, if they expect an increase, then they tend to buy more now just to avoid the increase in price. On the other hand, if they expect a fall in price, then they are going to increase their demand. They are going to reduce their demand now so that they will take an advantage of the fall in price in the near future. So if you look at the second point, the price of a cell phone is expected to fall next month. So people will stop buying cell phones now. If at least they will reduce their demand. So we have a change in demand here, not a change in quantity demanded, because the price of the cell phone hasn't fallen yet. It's going to fall in the next month. So a fall in price next month will cause a decrease in demand currently. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Then the price of a call from a cell phone falls. The price of a call from a cell phone falls. What do you think is going to be the effect on the demand for cell
phones? It's going to be a change in demand.
Yes, it will be a change in demand. Okay. Is it going to be an increase in demand or a decrease in demand?
A decrease in demand.
Why?
Because the cost and then the cell phones complement each other.
Yes. So if there's a fall in the price of one complement, what happens to the demand of the other?
When the price of the complement falls, the demand for the cell phones goes down.
Nope.
It increases.
Yes, let's take car and then fuel. Car and fuel. Assuming we only use fuel to power cars. Now there's a fall in the price of cars. What do? We'll buy more cars, which means we need more fuel. So the demand for fuel will go up whenever there's a reduction in the price of cars. Is that okay?
Yeah, but my coefficient is the price of a call. When the price of a call falls, and phones are used for calls.
Yes.
So if the price of call falls, that means that the complement for that thing is going to go down. And since it's a complement to this group, this was also going to go down. That's my thought.
Now, see, the thing is that we use phones to make calls, right?
Yes.
Now, if the cost of making a call is too high, don't you think it will discourage people from buying phones? Assuming we only use phones to make calls, we don't use phones for anything again. Okay, we don't use phones for anything again. We only use phones to make calls. So if the cost of calls are very steep, if the cost is very steep, then we can't make calls, and as a result, we don't need phones. You understand? So we buy less phones. But what about the case where the price of a call is very cheap? So now everyone can afford a call. So why don't we buy more cell phones so that we can make more calls? What do you think?
Yeah.
Because now the price of a call is very cheap. So we can buy more phones and then we use it to make more calls.
Yeah, yeah.
So whenever there's a fall in the price of a call, okay, now people will be enticed to make more calls, and we need more cell phones to make those calls. So we tend to buy more phones, more cell phones. So there'll be an increase in the demand for cell phones. Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Now let's look at the price of a call from a landline phone increases. Now we compare landline to cell phones. They are substitutes, right? You can either use a cell phone or you can use a landline. So now if the price of the landline has increased, then people will stop buying landline. They'll come and buy more phones. So remember we said whenever there's an increase in the price of a substitute, it causes an increase in demand of the other substitute. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the introduction of camera phones makes cell phones more popular. Okay, now they've introduced camera phones. So we can use phones for more functions. We have more functions on phones now. So if cell phones have now become popular, we'll buy more, even if the prices are the same. We tend to buy more. So that will cause an increase in demand for cell phones. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yes, this is a solution. What we've explained: the fall in the price of a cell phone increases the quantity of cell phones demanded, but then it will have no effect in the demand for cell phones. Okay, so there's a change in quantity demanded, and then an expected fall in the price of a cell phone next month will decrease the demand for cell phones. Today, people will wait for the lower price. Okay, and also a fall in the price of a call from a cell phone because the two goods are complements. Okay. It's going to increase the demand for cell phones. Okay, it's going to increase the demand for cell phones. And then a rise in the price of a call from a landline. Those who the landline and the cell phones are substitutes. So it should increase the demand for cell phones. And then increase in the popularity of a cell phone. Okay, this should cause an increase in the demand for cell phones. All right. Any questions?
No.
We are to use a graph to illustrate the effects of the following. The events are the same. Okay, so if there's a fall in the price of cell phone, we are to use a graph to illustrate that. Okay, so this is an increase in the quantity demanded. Remember that one is upward movement along it's an upward movement along the demand curve. Okay, so let's look at that. Oh, sorry. It's an there's a fall in the price of cell phones. Okay, so we should experience an increase in quantity demanded. So a downward movement in along the demand curve. Okay, a downward movement along the demand. So if initially we're here, because of the fall in price, we increase the quantity that we buy. Okay, so that is going to be the diagram for the first one. Okay, but then for the other ones, remember the events caused either an increase in demand or a decrease in demand. So for those ones, the diagrams are the same depending on whether it's an increase or it's a decrease. So if the event caused a decrease in demand, then the demand curve will shift from T0 to T2. Okay, and then if the event caused an increase in demand, then it should shift from T0 to T1. Okay, if it caused an increase in demand, it should go to T1, from T0 to T1. Are we together?
Yes.
Now, do the following events illustrate the law of demand? Okay, do the following events illustrate the law? Now, we just need to understand that we only have the law of demand when all the other factors affecting demand are held constant, except price. So we'll have the law of demand only if there's a change in the price of the good in question. So if you look at the following events, it's only the first event that's that dealt with a change in price of cell phones. Okay, so this will illustrate the law of demand because a fall in the price of a cell phone will cause an increase in quantity demanded of cell phone. That is one side of the law of demand. But if you look at the other ones, all those ones were as a result of changes in the other factors affecting demand. So expectation of future prices, changes in price of complements and substitutes, and then increase in the taste of the good. All these ones we're not dealing with change in price. So it's only the price of the cell phone falling that actually illustrates the law. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So all the other events do not do that. Now let's look at the practical one. So far this year, airlines have been able to raise fares, but still fill their planes. So does the news imply that the law of demand doesn't work in the real world? Now we know that if there's an increase in the price of a good, then the quantity demanded of the good is supposed to fall, right? So if
Yes.
the airline companies are raising their fares, then they were supposed to have empty seats, but that isn't happening. They are still able to get all their seats filled. So does it mean that the law of demand doesn't work in the real world? Explain why or why not. What do you think?
First of all, I think it works, but with this particular example, it's dependent on the type of goods that you're talking about here. And here it goes with how do I say it? A normal good where the income increases, the
So
demand for
here
it also.
we are not talking about income. It's only the fares. Okay, they've
Okay.
increased their fares, so it's like the cost of taking, going in for their service has increased. Yet people are buying the service, and you see, it's like it's trying to violate the law of demand, right?
Yes.
But it doesn't mean, yes, the law works. If you come to the real world, the law works. But then the explanation is that, see, when we are defining the law of demand, we hold all the other factors constant, all the other factors. But it's possible that when we come to the real world, things are not constant. So yes, they've increased their price of their service. What if there's an increase in the income of the consumer? They can still afford more. Okay, they can still afford more. What if now there's even a positive shift in their preference towards traveling by air? So it doesn't matter now. Their preference favors airlines. So whether the price is high or not, they'll still go for it. So the law is there. It works though, but then we have to hold all the other factors constant. But it's very difficult to come to the real world holding everything constant. No, it doesn't actually works like that. Okay, so the law works. Okay, it works in the real world, but then the issue is that we need to hold the other factors constant. But we can't always hold them constant. So the price of, if the price of an airline ticket rises, other things remaining the same, the quantity demanded of airline tickets will decrease. This is the law. Okay, so that's the reason why the demand curve slopes downwards. But then the law of demand actually works in the real world. The only reason is that we need to hold the other things constant, but then we didn't hold them constant. They are not always the same. They change. Their income do change. Preferences do change. Our expectations of future prices, they do change. Okay, that is why it's possible that prices will go up, yet to buy more. At times, it's possible. You see, we need to understand that there are even violations of the law. Okay, some goods do violate the law of demand. An example is a gifting good. Do you know what a gifting good is?
No.
You see, but I'm sure you remember inferior goods. Inferior goods. They are goods that
Yes.
we tend to buy more
Yes.
when our income falls.
Yes.
Gifting goods are inferior goods. I'm sure one day we'll get there. Whenever there's a change in price of a commodity, the change in quantity demanded that we see is called the total effect. Okay, but then the total effect can be decomposed into substitution effect and income effect. When price, assuming that there's an increase in price, okay, if there's an increase in price, assuming quantity demanded falls by 10, this quantity demanded falling by 10 is what we call the total effect. But then within the total effect, now assuming the good had a substitute, now because of the increase in price of the good A, good B is now relatively cheaper. So people will go in for good B. That is what we call the substitution effect. Okay, the substitution effect is always negative. Whenever price goes up, we buy less of that good. And then we have income effect. When the price of a commodity increases, your real income falls. Okay, your assuming initially you were having $20 and the good cost $10. You could buy 2 units, right? You could buy 2. Now the price has increased to 20. If you have $20, you can now buy just 1. So you are still holding your $20, what we call the nominal income. Your real income measures the quantity of goods and services you can buy. It has fallen. Are we together?
Okay.
So when there's an increase in price, the face value of your money doesn't change, but then the value in the money changes. That's what we call the real income. It falls. You cannot buy as much quantities as you used to buy. So there, whenever there's an increase in the price of the commodity, your real income will fall. So if the good in question is a normal good, what do we do when our income falls? We buy less. You understand? So that will be the income effect. So we combine the substitution effect and the income effect before we get the total effect. We'll get there when we look at consumer theory. Okay.
Okay.
But then I wanted you to understand this. For the gifting goods, when price increases, we tend to buy more. When price increases, we rather tend to buy more. It violates the law of demand. So the demand curve for gifting goods are upwards sloping. They move upwards. So as price goes, it's like a supply curve instead of it moving down. So that is one violation of the law of demand. Another one is necessities, the goods that we cannot do without. Sugar, water, salt, and those stuffs. Now, when prices go up, you can't say you won't eat salt again because now the price of salt is too high. Or you can't say that when the price of salt falls, because of the law of demand, now you buy more salt and consume more salt. Do we do that?
No.
We don't do that. So for those ones, even if price increases, we still remain at the quantity that we buy remains. If price falls, the same thing. So that one too violates the law of demand. So I think this week, when we are looking at elasticities, I'm sure we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. So the law works in the real world, but then we need to hold all the other factors constant, of which we cannot actually always do that. Okay. So that is it for that particular practice problem. Okay. Now we move on to supply. What is the effect of each of the following events? Supply of timber beams. So the first one is that the wage rate of sawmill workers rises. We look at that. The price of sawdust rises. The price of a timber beam rises. The price of a timber beam is expected to rise next year. Congress to introduce a new law that reduces the amount of forest that can be cut for timber products. And then there's a new technology that lowers the cost of producing a beam. Okay? So what will be the effect of these events on the supply of timber beam? So let's look at the first one. When the wage rate of sawmill workers rise. Now, we need to understand that the wage for sawmill workers is part of the cost of production. Okay, so if now there's an increase in the wage rate, it means there's going to be an increase in the cost of production. And what is the effect of an increase in the cost of production on the supply of the commodity? Is going to fall. Okay, when you increase wage, we are paying more. It's part of our cost of production. So if there's an increase in this cost, we cannot, incur so much cost. We can only produce just a little of whatever good we are producing. So a rising wage in general will decrease supply of any commodity at all. Are we together?
Yes.
And then the rise in the price of sawdust. Remember, and as applied to, we have complements. Sawdust and then production of timber beams. They are complements. As you are producing the timber beams, you are getting sawdust, right? So now,
yes.
If there's an increase in the price of sawdust, they will want to get more sawdust. So they will have to, produce more timber beams so that they can get more sawdust to take advantage of the increase in the price of sawdust. So there's going to be an increase in the supply of timber beams. Okay, there's going to be an increase in the supply. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay. Then a rise in the price of a timber beam. Remember the law of supply. At a higher price, we do what? We supply more. So if there's an increase in the price of the timber beam itself, that is going to increase the quantity supplied of timber beams. This is not a change in supply. Okay, it's a change in quantity supplied because it's the price of timber itself that is changing. Okay, so a rise in the price of a timber beam will increase the quantity supplied of timber beams. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay. Then there's an expected rise in the price of timber beams. Now, if you're a seller, you're expecting an increase in the price of it. You hoard. Okay, you hoard. It's even possible you won't sell it at all. You're waiting for the increase in price so that you take advantage of that. So that's going to decrease your current supply. So whenever we expect an increase in price of our goods, we supply less now. So there's a decrease in supply. And then there's a new law that is reducing the amount of forest that we can use to produce timber. So what is going to happen? It will decrease the quantity of timber, the supply of timber that we can offer for sale. So this will cause a decrease in supply. It will cause a decrease in supply. And then a new technology. Remember, technology determines our level of productivity. Okay, technology determines the level of productivity. So if there's a new technology that's going to lower the cost, it means we are becoming more productive, which means we can now produce more. So that should increase the supply of timber beams. Is that okay?
Yes.
Now, the same events, we have to use graphs to illustrate them. So now, apart from the price of a timber beam rising, which will cause an upward movement along the supply curve, all the others will necessitate drawing of a new supply curve. So if the event is causing a decrease in supply, then we know the curve will shift leftwards. If it's causing an increase in supply, it should cause it to shift rightwards. Okay. So depending on the event, if it's a decrease in supply, we move from S0 to S2. If it's an increase in supply, we move from S0 to S1. Is that okay?
Yes.
But then for the increase in the price of a timber beam, that one, the supply curve is the same, but then we move upwards. Okay, we move upwards. All right. Now, which event illustrates the law of supply? That one will only deal with the one that causes a change in the price of timber beams. And that will be this, right? The price of a timber beam rises. It's only this one that shows the. All right. Okay. All right. Now, at GM and then UAW are going restructuring workers' jobs. This restructuring with no change in the wage rate will save them $1 billion in labor costs a year. So the restructuring is going to lower and is going to give them an additional $1 billion a year without actually increasing the wage of its workers. Now, the question is, how will this cost-cutting agreement change GM's supply of vehicles? We have to explain our answer. Okay. Now you are restructuring your work. I mean, the business that you are doing, and this restructuring doesn't involve increasing the wage of your workers, and it's rather cutting down your labor cost, your wage by $1 billion. So what are we experiencing here? We are experiencing increase in productivity. There's no increase in your wage, but then assuming that there's going to be an increase in your benefit by $1 billion. If initially this $1 billion was supposed to be part of your labor cost, but then because of the restructuring, you've been able to save this $1 billion. Then, as a firm, you become what? More productive. Are we together?
Yes.
And being more productive helps in what? In production. It helps you to produce more. So by becoming more productive, you are able to produce more, and then you will do what? You will actually supply of whatever that you are producing. So whenever there's a reduction in labor cost, you become more productive, and higher productivity yields higher production. So get increased supply. Okay, so there's going to be an increase. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Now let's look at this table showing the demand and supply schedule for milk. Okay, so this is the price, quantity demanded, and then quantity supplied. So the first question is that what is the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity of milk? Can you try this one? What is the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity?
The equilibrium price is 1.50.
Okay,
And the
equilibrium quantity.
equilibrium quantity is 150.
Very good. So equilibrium price is the price at which quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. So very good. 1.5, 150 for price and quantity respectively. All right. Now, we are still using the same data. Describe the situation in the milk market if the price were 1.75 a carton, and explain how the market reaches its new equilibrium. If price should go to 1.75, what are we seeing here? Quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded. I'm sure we cannot see that.
Yes, yes.
So we have a surplus in the milk market.
Surplus.
Okay. We have a surplus. So whenever we have a surplus, what happens? There will be a downward pressure on what? On price. Okay. You are selling more than what we want to buy. If you are selling more than what we want to buy, what do you have to do? Reduce price so that you'll be able to sell all that you have. So they'll keep on reducing price until the price comes back to 1.5. And at that time, quantity demanded will be exactly equal to quantity supplied. Then equilibrium will be restored. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay. So that is what they do. The price begins to fall. And as it does, quantity demanded will increase, quantity supplied decreases, and then the surplus will decrease. So it will keep on, the surplus will keep on decreasing as price is increasing until we get back to the equilibrium. All right, now another event. There's a drought, and this decreases the quantity supplied by 45 cartons a day at each price. What is the new market equilibrium, and how does the market adjust? Now, if there is a decrease in supply by 45, it's going to cause a shortage, right?
Yes.
Initially, this was the equilibrium, so at 1.5, 150, price and quantity respectively. Now, supply has decreased, so we'll come back. The supply can will shift leftwards. So this will come to. This will be the new equilibrium. And at this point, you see that there's going to be an increase in price. Whenever there's a shortage, there will be an increase in price. And as price increases, equilibrium, the demand, quantity demanded will fall. Okay, quantity demanded will fall, and they will go back to this new equilibrium. So whenever there's a decrease in supply, holding demand constant, equilibrium price will increase, and then equilibrium quantity will fall. The equilibrium quantity. So that this is what it is. I hope that's
Yeah.
another event. Milk becomes more popular, and better fees increase milk production. So here we have two events at the same time. And remember how we go about this. First, you ask, is the event affecting demand or supply? Second, is it causing it to shift to the left or right? Third, what is going to be its effect on equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity? So the first event, milk has become more popular. That will cause an increase in demand. People will buy more milk, right?
Yes.
And then better fees increase milk production. This will affect supply, and it's going to be an increase in supply. Is that okay?
Yes.
So let's use the diagram. Things like this, the last time I told you, you should just be using the diagram. So if this was the initial equilibrium, okay, demand, initial supply. Now the milk becoming more popular will cause the demand curve to shift to the right. And then better fees increasing milk production to cause supply to shift to the right. So this is going to be the new equilibrium. But if you remember, we said if demand and supply shift in the same direction, okay, now here they are shifting to the right. Quantity, equilibrium quantity will definitely increase. But then for equilibrium price, it will depend on the magnitudes of change. Okay, it depends. Here, it has been drawn in such a way that price has fallen. So the increase in supply is way more than the increase in demand. What if the demand curve was rather here? This would have been the new equilibrium. Price would have increased. Or what if it was somewhere here? You see that there will be no change in price at all. But definitely, there will be an increase in the quantity, equilibrium quantity. So for price, we don't know what is going to happen. But for quantity, we are certain that it is going to increase. Okay.
Okay.
So that is what happens with this event. All right. Now, after wild weather, higher food prices on horizon. Now, after heavy rains this year, the corn harvest will be less than expected, while the demand for corn will continue to increase. Food prices will continue to rise. Here's an assertion. Using demand and supply model, explain why food prices are expected to rise. Now, if you look at this, okay, now there's going to be what? Heavy rains. Heavy rains will decrease the corn harvest. So the supply of corn will do what? Will decrease. But then there will still be demand for corn. The demand for corn will still increase, which means that the demand for any corn food is going to what? It's going to increase. So supply is decreasing, demand is what? Demand is increasing. What is going to be its effect? So what do? As always, we draw our diagrams. Okay, our diagrams. A fall in supply, an increase in, they didn't draw the diagram. All right, but I think we can do that on our own, right?
Yeah.
So let's draw this on our own. These are diagrams. So initial demand initial supply. So equilibrium price is here, equilibrium quantity is here. All right. Now there's a fall in supply, right? So the supply curve will shift to the left. But then there's what? There's an increase in demand, right?
Yeah.
Good. Now let's look at this carefully. I'm coming. Let me extend this one. So if we draw the demand curve here, this is going to be the new equilibrium quantity. You see that there's an increase. What is happening to price? Price will go up. Now, what if the increase in demand is here? This will be the new equilibrium. Quantity will fall, right?
Yes.
And price will still go up. So we know that if demand and supply move in different directions, definitely price will increase, but then the quantity we don't know. And even for this assertion, it was on price alone. The quantity wasn't part, it was just price. Okay. So definitely price will go up. It doesn't matter the change, price will definitely go up. So this is the reason why price is going to go up. The increase in the demand for corn will shift the demand curve to the right. Then the price of corn is going to go up because supply of corn has shifted to the left. Okay. So definitely because of the higher price of corn, now any good, any food that uses corn, okay, any food that uses corn, there's going to be an increase in your cost of production because the price of corn has gone up. So if the cost of production has increased, what do? We just have to increase our prices. That's the reason why the food prices will go up. So this one, if we have to be more specific, then it's going to be the food prices of what? Of foods containing corn or foods that we use corn. But then it can run through other ones because normally food has substitutes. So it's either we use food produced using corn or maybe wheat or millet. So if that of, how do we call it? The corn foods, their prices are going up, then the other ones too, the prices go up. Okay. The other one too, the price will go up. So this is where we end. I will send you the link to the quiz, and then as always, we'll try and go to.
Okay.
All right. So do have a very nice day. God willing.
Okay.
We'll meet on Thursday.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.